Hi and welcome back to my channel. This is a different video for you, and I'm going to tell you the best way that I can explain it why I need to do this video. I happened upon a live sprint maybe 3 weeks ago and discovered that there was a small group of people that stream regularly when it comes to reading sprints. And the fun thing about reading sprints is you're just feeling very productive. So sometimes we'll use those sprints to, at least I do, write book reviews, but just trying to be productive. So I started to introduce myself to people in that group, and at that time I was still the bibliophile puzzler. But I felt that that name didn't really apply to me in the last year or so, despite the fact that I'm using my bedroom, so therefore the background is jigsaw puzzles. No, I am more focused on reading. I've never given up reading as my focus, but the puzzles that I'm working on, like for example, I do have a puzzle right here, another Child's Wysocki puzzle. So I'm still doing puzzles, but my content relates to reading. Now, the first thing I want to say is I want to give a disclaimer because I am going to talk a lot of numbers in this video. And numbers, statistics, facts, calculations, you name it, has always been a joy of mine. I've always loved it. I played the hardest math games I can find. Like, for example, I play the different versions of the Wordle game. There's Nerdle, Dual, Try, Girdle, and just all of these really intense where you have to use a lot of calculations, which include, using algebraic functions. That's just something that I've always loved. And then I fell in love with spreadsheets, and they have a built-in function feature where it can collect data for you, and you can present that data or see that data in a summary of whatever data you have added those function features for. That's just my world. That's just something that from a kid, like for example, the timetable, I learned it in one go. And my teacher was so mad at me because she thought in some way I cheated. But how can you cheat if you're saying it out loud? But math has always been my thing. So that's my disclaimer. You are going to hear numbers, statistics, and things of that nature. But these numbers and these statistics that I'm going to present to you in this video are purely based on what I'm doing and what I've done and what I might do, not anyone else or anything else. So let's get into this. I want to say also that I do appreciate a commonly used phrase that I've heard recently, that the only person you're competing against is yourself. And I do appreciate that comment because it's something that I live by. I am one who decides what I want to read, when I want to read, how much I want to read, what category, what genre, number of pages, number of books. That's all on me. Okay, I don't care if you read fast or if you read slow, as long as you are having the joy that comes from reading. That's the most important thing. Does reading bring you joy? And let's just go off on a tangent for a second. Do jigsaw puzzles bring you joy? Does cross-stitching bring you joy? Does crocheting bring you joy? And so on. If you have a hobby, does that hobby bring you joy? And that's all that counts, no matter what the next person does and the next person and the next person. So I'd like to also take this time to thank 26 new subscribers in the past month. I've never had that kind of a jump in that short of a time span as I have right now. In that jump, that amazing number of 26 new subscribers, that is 100% because of the reading sprints that I found and that I started to attend. And then in many, if almost all of the sprints, you have a moderator. Her name is Christina. Her YouTube name is BookTube Mama. She doesn't have a channel for content. That's just her YouTube handle. Well, lo and behold, I am now in the BookTube Bible. Yes, there's such a thing as the BookTube Bible. And because I do produce content on this channel, I am now in that Bible. So thank you to Christina for that. And thank you for everybody in the sprints that I've been going to that not only encouraged me to read more, but also have subscribed to my channel. Now, I've been thinking about sharing my NetGalley story and my history, and I do have notes, and hopefully I won't really need to use them, because if I do, I have to put glasses on, and if I put glasses on, oh, there's not much of a glare. Okay, so I won't, I'll keep my glasses on. My new pair of glasses that's coming in about a week will have an anti-glare feature. So, I want to start by sharing my history. And we're talking about reviewing. I'm not talking about my family. I'm not talking about my faith or my mental health, anything like that. We're just my reading/reviewing history. Now, I began writing reviews for Yahoo groups. And through a recommendation from somebody in a Yahoo group, I was connected to Romantic Times. Romantic Times was a print magazine. I think it started in 2000 I'm going to say 2008, but I'm not even going to guess that. That's wrong. But the Romantic Times was a print magazine. I applied and I got the position as a book reviewer, and in one genre, Regency romance, I had my own byline, which meant I had an entire page dedicated to me each month where I would talk about the Regency romances I read that month. And then I read in other genres. So I even did like a pseudonym for one genre and a pseudonym for another. But I decided to Google myself, Robin Taylor, Romantic Times magazines. Lo and behold, I've been quoted in the encyclopedia.com website as evidence that I reviewed for this magazine. That blows my mind. I haven't had time to play with that. I may never look at it again. It was just something that I wanted to see if there was any proof that I could show you that I did write for a print magazine. Well, unfortunately, the editor and owner and editor of that magazine passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And the other editors and people that were producing the magazine decided to fold the magazine, so the magazine does no longer exist. Now, I also wanted to say that when I was doing the Yahoo groups, I was reviewing so much I created what I know now to be a blog, but in the Yahoo sense. And by creating this, I had to use HTML, the hypertext markup language, in order to create this blog or this Yahoo blog. And I did that for quite a while, right alongside the time I was doing the Romantic Times magazine. But I decided to step away from reviewing in all formats, the magazine and Yahoo, and that was due to mental health issues and challenges that were difficult to overcome. So then I went on a reading drought, a long drought, 7 or 8 years. But there was a caveat to that reading drought. If Catherine Coulter, her FBI series, or James Patterson Alex Cross series came out with a book during those 7 or 8 years when I really wasn't reading, I was reading those two authors. I think I was also reading Faye Kellerman and not Jonathan Kellerman, just Faye Kellerman. But nothing to the quantity where I was doing previously. So fast forward, okay, 7 or 8 years later, I joined several coloring communities on YouTube and Facebook. One of the colorists mentioned more than once that she was going to be reviewing this book that she got from a publisher or that book that she got from a publisher. So I DM'd her and I said, hey, I used to review for a magazine and for Yahoo. I would love to get back into reviewing. Can you give me an idea on how I can get started? She said no. So she brings it up again on another stream. I ask her again. She says no. And I'm the kind of person who usually takes the answer no once and walks away. But no, I asked her twice. Okay, so that was that. So on another occasion, maybe weeks, months later, could even have been a year later, I was watching another YouTube live stream and the host mentioned a book that she was reviewing. But she didn't say that it was a print book. She said it was from a site called NetGalley. I wasn't familiar with it. I didn't ask about it. I still felt a little stung by the rejection from the other situation. But this came up again on her stream. And I'm like, okay, let me check this out. So I go to check out NetGalley, and the site is netgalley.com. And I successfully signed up for NetGalley. My quick bio was just a reader and a reviewer, nothing else, not even a blogger at that time. And then I discovered more about my friend Fashawn, that she's like, Robin, I use NetGalley. In fact, I have a mountainous library of print books that publishers have been sending me. Let me connect you to these publicists. And so for the next 2 or 3 days, she had me writing letters, writing emails, making phone calls, and I immediately connected with the publishing world in that moment. Even before Robin Loves Reading was a thing, even before that blog came up, Fashawn connected me. And because of my history with the magazine, boom, I was in. Not that it's any big deal, but if you love what you do, and if you make what you do your place of joy, then you have a right to love what you do. And in my case, yes, I was very happy to hear that. So when I was reviewing for the magazine, one of the publishers that I steadily reviewed for was the publisher Kensington. So when Fashawn says she had a contact at Kensington, I also had an old contact at Kensington. So as it turns out, Kensington Publishing was the first publisher that gave me an auto approval. And I remember that auto approval letter to the T. I was at BJ's and we were shopping for food, for groceries. But even before we went to BJ's, I had a list of books that I was going to look for, because by now I'm reading. I'm reading for NetGalley, but I'm also reading for my edification, and I'll talk about that in a few moments. So I get a ding in my phone, and it's an email from Kensington Publishing. It was the auto approval. That just blew my mind. I was like so excited. So I was continually reading and writing reviews, reading books, writing reviews. And like I said, I knew that a couple of people had blogs, so I looked into those a little bit, and I decided, okay, I'm going to create a blog. It just seemed easy enough, so I had 2 choices, WordPress or Blogger. I went with Blogger, and I'm still with Blogger, except that I have my own domain. I used to be robinlovesreading.blogspot.com, but now, and for the last 6 years or so, it's just been robinlovesreading.com. So I began writing reviews for not just NetGalley, not just Goodreads, not just Amazon. By the way, I wrote so many reviews and did so much research at that point on a different avenue that I still rank as Amazon's 1% reviewer. So quite naturally, when I was reading books, I was also writing reviews on Amazon, because even before coming into the reading part, I had already achieved the 1% status as a reviewer. Go figure. Amazon, a lot of people don't like it, but that's that. So on May 18th, 2018, I posted my first review on my blog. And by posting my first review on my blog, I said, well, I'm a creature of habit. Give me anything that I'm going to do in life. It could be television shows, it could be books, it could be cross-stitch projects, it could be planner projects. I am a creature of habit. So I said, well, if this is really going to be what I do, which is blogging, I brought over all my NetGalley reviews into my blog. So the first month I blogged, I had 53 reviews. Not that I read 53 books in that particular month. In some months I read up to 70 books, but we're just going back to 2018. So now I'm posting reviews on my blog, and I experimented with format, and I came up with a format that I like. It's like a little bit of a stat information, the name of the author, the name of the title, the title of the book, the name of the author, the publisher, quantity of pages, date of publication, my rating, and of course, genre. And then below that, I put in the description, which is straight 100% copy and paste from the publisher's blurb. And then I have my thoughts, which is my review. And so it's dun, dun, dun. You're always going to get my thoughts, my review. And then below that, I have about the author. I get a copy of the author's image, their photo, and their bio, and their links. So I'm sharing all of this in every single review, probably since closer to 2019. I came up with this full-blown editorial type of review. Okay, so that's what I've been doing since 2018, and since then I have 2,758 reviews on my blog. This number is a little misleading because I am a die-hard series reviewer, and I binge series. So if I read a bunch of books in a series, I will create an image with 5, 6, 7 books that in that series, and then review each book in that series in one review. But that's neither here nor there, but that just goes to show you that 2,758, if you look under the tag series review on my blog, if you add that number to the blog, to the reviews tab, it does come up to, a considerable number. Now, NetGalley. Let's talk about NetGalley. NetGalley has a recommended feedback ratio of 80% in order to obtain approvals from publishers. The thing about this is, if you're new, like if you're just coming in and you have 2 requests or 2 approvals and 2 feedback, then your feedback is 100% because you've been 2 for 2. Or we'll just simplify it. If you have 1 book and 1 review, then you're 100%. If you have 3 books and 1 review, you're dropping down to 75%. You kind of see how that works, and it just goes from there. A lot of people, especially new people, and I applaud new people, are working to keep that 80% feedback ratio. They're also working to keep that number of ARCs, advanced review copies, or galleys below a certain number. It could be 200, it could be 300, it could be 500. Whatever that personal goal is they're working on that. But for me, my ratio was 65%. Now, I did a history search of my ratio, and I only went back as far as 2022. In 2022, my feedback ratio was 57%. In 2023, I had raised it 2 points to 59%. It took a whole year to only get 1 percentage higher to 60% in 2024. But then in 2025, this year that we're in, I jumped up to 65%. So I think I might have misspoke. I was 60% in 2024, and between 2024 and now, I am now 65%. I would love to get to 70%. I'm not shooting for 80%. And to be 100% honest with you, I'm really not concerned at all with my ratio, other than it's a discussion point in some of the groups that I belong to, and sometimes it's just fun. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I'm mentioning my feedback ratio. Now, if you look at my profile, which I will screenshot into this video, I have been approved for 3,571 advanced reader copies since 2018. But if I go over to my shelf on NetGalley, we find that my feedback ratio is only 2,336. So that means a difference of roughly 1,150. 1,150. Wow. Head blown, right? But of that 2,336 reviews that I have posted on NetGalley since 2018, it translates into 65% feedback ratio. Now, remember I said that I have 2,758 reviews on my blog, but on NetGalley I only have 2,336. Well, what's the difference? I am a series fanatic. I read entire series, and I avail myself of my public library, Holbrook Public Library, by means of Libby and Hoopla, and I borrow dozens of books yearly, and I read and review those. And that's why there's almost a 400 book difference between what I'm doing for Robin and what I'm doing for NetGalley. Now, another thing too is I have spreadsheets from here to there, from here to there. I am just a numbers person. I am a very calculated person. I'm a very detailed oriented person. I even may have a short measure of this compulsive reason to keep everything where I can see it. That's my family budget. That's the series that I'm reading. That's the blog tours which we're about to talk. That's just me. It's just me. So I started doing blog tours in 2020. A blog tour is a dedicated group of people, we'll say between 9 and 15 reviewers with a blog, but now with Bookstagram, which is Instagram for books. Up until like 2024, it was only bloggers who have a blog, and they would get a title, review that title by a specific date, include purchase links, include specific graphics and specific demographics about the author in a course of 4 or 5 days. And maybe I'll just throw up a screenshot of one of my blog tour posters. So I started doing that in 2020. Since then, to this date, I have done 1,272 blog tours. If we don't count 2026, which I think I already have maybe 15 or 20 lined up for next year. Now, if we don't count 2026 and we look at 1,272 since 2020, that's a little bit over 200 blog tours a year. Now, I did reduce that number a lot in 2024, and I reduced it for some months in this year, but in 2026 it will go back up to what I know that I can do, and I might just do a slideshow of what my spreadsheets look like over the years. I might do that. Now, why do I still have 1,119 unread galleys for NetGalley? Why are they still awaiting feedback? Yes, 1,119, but I'm still reading 325, 400, even 500 plus books a year. So if I'm reading hundreds and hundreds of books a year, why can't I hit that 80% feedback ratio? Well, for every single blog tour that I do, that specific blog tour, you receive an ARC. So it's 1 for 1 for that title. Another blog tour, 1 for 1 for that title. So I'm steadily reviewing yearly, but I'm only doing a percentage of what I'm reading for my own free time. And I think I came up with a stat like 75% of my blog is dedicated to blog tours, and 25% of it is dedicated to books that interest me or series that interest me. But I haven't fully, that's something that's not really written in stone, but that's what it is. So I keep providing feedback, and like I said, 2,336 titles. So that quick math is about 50% of that number of of reviews, 2,336, are blog tours. Okay, 50%. So if it's here and what I got, and half of that is blog tours, then there's still going to be an overage, and that's the overage that I have. Now, over the years, I still get ARCs. I won't say daily anymore because I'm a little bit more judicious, but at least several times a week. I get them either by widgets, like an author will say, hey, will you read this? Or would you do a tour for this? Or you seem like the perfect person to read this. Would you read this? I have auto approvals, which I have quite a handful of them. So if I want something, say, from Harper, if I want something from Atria or different Kensington, like I had mentioned, Harlequin, I just go to their group site, their group page on NetGalley, and just, take what I want. So I have that. And then I do make requests because there are publishers like Berkeley or Harlequin Trade Publishing, different than Harlequin Romance, that I have to make requests, but those are even limited because those come in as blog tours most of the time anyway. So because of all of that, my ratio of approval is 98% since 2018. But you have to remember that first 2 years before I started, well, for more than 2 years, started blog tours in 2020, I believe. So the first, yeah, 2 years. Okay, I don't know when my brain just went. But for that first 2 years, I'm getting ARCs, and I'm being approved and denied over that first 2 years. But then since 2020, everything changed. In fact, since 2020, I literally have something like 11 denials since 2020. That I don't get denied because I stay within the parameters of what I like to read and who I like to read for. So I still have some books that I have in the will not give feedback category. That's just kind of like its own little library for me, so that if I ever feel like going back to that book, I just have to go look at that title and switch it to feedback after I read and review it. But for my personal goal, to get as close to 100% as possible, I would like to get to 70%. I think if I got to 70%, then I would know that I'm doing 75% blog tours, like I said, 25% what I'm reading. And so in order for me to see that number at 70%, that's my personal goal. Now, if I really want to review a title that I've been declining for, let's say Berkeley does have a title that doesn't show up on its blog tour list. I was going to say Karen Rose, but I think I was just approved the Karen Rose book now that I think of it. Yeah. So, okay, but let's just say a Karen Rose title, okay? Or some of James Patterson's titles. I have a category on one of my spreadsheets that will track books that I want to borrow. Now, granted, Libby as well as Hoopla, they do have a favorites feature, but I like to see it where I can see it. So if I get something declined, I'll just get it from my library. If I don't get it from my library, I'll use an Audible credit. If I can't use an Audible credit, I will check Kindle Unlimited. If I can't get it from Kindle Unlimited, I spend my hard-earned dollars and just get it on Amazon. That's what I'm doing. I also mentioned being a series fanatic, so I could be reading a series that interests me, or there's a discussion about a series, and because of that discussion about a series, I went over to one of my favorite websites, which is fantasticfiction.com. You can look up by author, by title, or by series. So I will look it up by series, by series or by author, and I will go and I will literally copy and paste that series info and bring it into one of my spreadsheets. And just for the heck of it, I will put on the screen right now what my 2026 series reading spreadsheet looks like. And so those copy and paste that you see that I'm showing you right now on the screen, that comes from Fantastic Fiction. Those are links that directly link to Fantastic Fiction, but at least it's a way that I know which is the first, second, third, 15th book in the series, and so on. In addition to that, I still scour the site and I still make my own requests, and it is what it is. So I've given you my review and history, I've given you my NetGalley history, and now we'll briefly touch on my YouTube history. I've been with YouTube as far as a content provider, and was I smart enough to go ahead and look that up? No, of course I didn't look that up. But I've been with YouTube for years, and I think if I just simply go to my name and go to videos and go to oldest, I can tell you right now, 7 years ago, I've been with YouTube producing content. Sometimes I'll talk about books, sometimes I'll talk about my wrap-ups or whatever, or sometimes I might even have a discussion video like this is. I have played around a lot with YouTube. I've done really good. I've done Friday reads. I've done library hauls. I've done a barrage of things. But in this 7-year span of being a YouTube content creator, I have dealt with mental health challenges that have been overwhelming. And if I get triggered, I basically shut down. No, I don't stop reading for the most part, but I do stop producing content. So there are times when there were 11 months between uploads, a year between uploads. Again, I'm reading, I'm blogging. If you look at my blog, what did I say? 2,700 reviews on my blog. This whole time I'm blogging. This whole entire time my blog is growing. And when I say my blog is growing, we're talking about 100,000 visitors a month. So yes, my blog is growing. But my YouTube channel has grown very incrementally because I cannot produce as much content as I'd like. But we have NetGalley November 2.0 beginning in less than 48 hours. Or is it more than 48 hours? In a little over 48 hours. NetGalley November 2.0. Look for my video on that and you'll see what I'm talking about. Because of that, I've been playing around with my digital planner, trying to decide how I am going to present myself during 2020. During November. So starting November 1st, my plan is to sit right here. This is my most comfortable spot. Yes, I have an office over there that has a recliner. Yes, I have an office over there that also has a desk and an office chair. But I'm going to sit right here. You'll see me right here. And I'm going to try to do daily vlogs. If you don't see me right here, you'll see me in bed. Okay? Because I'm okay with that. You know, you want to see the real me. You don't want to fake me. You just want the real Robin. So I hope that my goal for November is 40 books, which would be 38 arcs that I want to read and 2 library books. But as far as my NetGalley November, at least 38 NetGalley books. That's a little over a book a day just on the NetGalley arcs. They're all going to be NetGalley arcs. In fact, I want to just refer to my spreadsheet because I am trying right now to get as many of my... I think I have read all of my blog tour titles for November. For November, I still have to read The Perfect Host, Otherwise Engaged, and Innocent Road. But other than those, I've read my blog tour titles for November. Those reviews I will write. And then it looks like I have 7 blog tours for December. So 7 reviews will go towards blog tours, but 30 plus reviews will go towards my NetGalley percentage. And that's where I'm hoping I can get a little bit higher than 65%. I have a great system lined up for NetGalley, for the NetGalley November 2.0 event. I have created an album, collections on my iOS, but I have the remaining books I have to read for November, the library books that I mentioned, anything I have from December of this year, and I think for December I only have 10 titles, and then any of my 2026 titles that I can get done. I have logged in my album all of the books by month. So if I get to May of 2026, for example, I only have 1 book, which is Caller Unknown by Jillian McAllister. But that would put me way over 50 for November. So I'm not thinking I'm going to get to maybe April and May's arcs during the month of November. But my plan is, as you can see, to work through my 2025 arcs during the month of November. Why did I set that goal? I set that goal for a very simple reason. We talked about feedback ratio over and over again in this video, right? Well, we've also talked briefly about the fact that I have an outstanding queue of 1,100 books. So I have a plan to 2 backlog books, 1 current book. 2 backlog, 1 current. 2 backlog, 1 current. That's only going to last for another month or 2 because the way that I've got things organized is that when I get a new book in, I'll be able to read it that day or the next day, and then I go back to that backlog. So at some point, it's going to be 3 or even 4 backlog books to every new book. That's my 2026 goal. I'm starting with that in November by that 38 arcs. And like I said, of that 38, they're not all blog tours, because it looks like I only have 7 books that are blog tours in December. So of that 38 that I plan to read, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try to knock 30 off of my shelf. So every month I would strive to knock off 20 to 25. November's exceptional because it's an event. But generally my goal is 20 or 25 books each month indefinitely. As long as NetGalley is a thing and my eyes work and I can read or my ears hear and I can listen, I will just chip away at that number. So that is my history. That is my NetGalley stuff. That is a little bit about me and a little bit about what I want to do with NetGalley November 2.0. And so you are going to get a lot of videos from me. They will be vlog format. No, I've never done a reading vlog video before, but that's the goal that I have set forward for next month, and we'll see how that goes. And I don't think I can think of anything else. The video is too long as it is, but thank you so much for watching, and I will try to throw in screenshots of things that come to me as I'm doing the editing of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.